In his 1964 nomination acceptance address, Barry Goldwater says, famously, "Extremism in defense of liberty is no vice, moderation in pursuit of justice is no virtue." So what's the big deal? Why is this one line, kind of a beautiful, poetic line, symmetrically constructed, it expresses a powerful sentiment, one that's been echoed by many other politicians since? Why did this one line in 1964 become one of the biggest campaign gaffes in modern American election history? His supporters, Goldwater's supporters, after all, absolutely loved it. The conservative faction of the Republican Party at the time jumped for joy quite literally when he said these lines. The Cow Palace, San Francisco's Cow Palace, an old auditorium where the speech was given, shook for 5 full minutes after Goldwater delivered this line because conservatives were so enthralled with the sentiment. And he received a 5 minute longer standing ovation when the speech was over. But if we look further into that convention, we can see that both Republicans, as well as the rest of the country, were really wary about this idea that we should defend extremism. Richard Nixon, in fact, had given a warm-up speech for Barry Goldwater and had specifically said that he hoped the Republican Party platform would specifically repudiate, quote, extremism. Dwight Eisenhower, who was watching the speech at home, was absolutely aghast that a Republican Party nominee would stand up and on national television defend extremism. And the reason is quite simple, is that extremism was an incredibly toxic term, maybe the most toxic term in 1964. And the reason is because of Kennedy's death. John F. Kennedy's death in November of 1963, less than a year before this speech was given, had set off a debate about not just America's role in the Cold War and whether Lee Harvey Oswald was solely responsible for Kennedy's death, but also about how we should talk to one another, how we should treat one another across political lines. Many in the country filled Kennedy in a sense, that extremism was responsible for his death, that there was this climate, this unsustainable climate of doom and gloom, of resorting to polarizing attempts, resorting even to violence when dealing with people that we didn't agree with. And that was something, especially in the 64 election, that Americans needed to step back from. And so extremism became this catch-all term for an increasingly polarized and violent international community, and even in the country itself, and that had been responsible for Kennedy's death, even more so than Lee Harvey Oswald. And so for the major party candidate to stand up and defend extremism, it's almost as if he's defending a climate that had just laid waste to the slain president, a president that many people were coming to love at seeing him as a martyr for this cause.